Hi, and welcome to the very first video of my journey into Miniature Madness. I thought an appropriate place to start would be where every video production starts, with a clapperboard. So let's do one in 12th scale. With this video being the madness behind the madness, it's for those who want to see all of the experiments. So you'll see where we went wrong rather than the summarized version of the final success. So with that, let's get stuck in. So this is a useful bit of board I found. Looks like it'll do the job. Bit of 5mm ply. Now this really got my interest and was the inspiration for this clapperboard. A little miniature clothes peg, especially because of the little click there. I got these from the Range, which is a kind of craft and hobby store similar to Hobby Lobby or Hobbycraft, somewhere like that. Beautifully cheap, about £2 a bag. It doesn't appear to be an official standardised size for a clapperboard, but we'll assume that we're going to take one that'll be about 30 centimetres square in real life. So that scales down to 2.5 centimetres ish in our world. I realise it's not just a square. We've got to make sure we've got enough space so the clapper can open at the back. So we're going to have to do a little bit of fiddling to cut out the shape that we need. Okay, I'm going to cut this with a regular Stanley knife. This one isn't a regular Stanley knife because I've named her Sophia. Don't ask me why, there's probably another story attached to that. Anyway, it should be plenty strong enough to cut through this ply as long as we're careful. Whew, Gordon Bennett, this is a bit tougher than I expected. I'll just nick that corner off there. Get the ruler out of the way and let's see how it works. Yeah, I think that'll work. Right, let's give it a bit of a sanding. So here's my sanding block, which has 120 grit, which is perfect, just to give this a sanding over with. My sanding block, by the way, is off an old broken rotary tool. It seems like the ideal thing for a sanding block. Right, are we happy with that? Not sure. Wood seems to be on a bit of a curve. So more sanding. Here's what I've learnt off camera. If you want something to be flat, sand in one direction. Going backwards and forwards puts it on a curve. So now let's do an initial assembly. Whew. Oh, how am I going to do this? This is probably overkill, but I don't want to get in there with my fingers and end up bending the spring up. Ta-da! Now we'll just put that somewhere safe. Right, okay, I'm probably going to end up mumbling away to myself here while I find which bit goes where so we can replicate the grooves so the spring will catch exactly the same way that it does on the clothes peg. And it's back out with Sophia, and cutting these little grooves is more of a pain than I'd like it to be. Now, how are we we're going to do you. After a good old dig in the shed, this is the smallest drill bit I can find, so it will have to do. And this is the smallest drill I can find. Now, with any luck, this thing should be ready for assembly. Let's get this back on, if I can get my butterfingers to work. Oh. Okay, I think that goes on there, something like that. And after much jiggery pokery and fiddling about, the top piece should be in place like that. Doesn't seem very secure. I'm a bit dubious about how this is going to hold together. Only one way to find out if it works. Let's give it a practice click. Okay, maybe it's the spring. Let's have a look at a full size close peg. This one's interesting. I've not seen a spring like that. Not sure I'm a fan, but let's pull it apart, see if it's any use. Well, that's weird. That's really weird. I don't think we can make any use of that at all, actually. Let's get an ordinary one. Now we've got a spring that we're familiar with. Let's have a look. Of course, it's way too wide. Way too wide. Well, let's just get a pair of pliers and try and squeeze it in a bit. Right, after a good British cup of tea and staring at all the parts before me, let's go for a completely different attempt. We're going to glue the miniature clothes peg onto my scrap of wood and trim it up to suit. And a quick sand to smooth up those rough ends. Alright, let's mark out the size of a itty bitty clapperboard. I think about there looks quite good. And let's cut it out. Bit more sand in, followed by a bit more sand in, followed by a bit more sand in. And a quick check to see how that all fits together, and yeah, I think we're ready for the next stage. Time for some wood glue. This is Evo Stick, stronger than the wood itself. Right, I guess what we need is the you know what? Hang on, I think we need to get out the close-up glasses. That's better. Okay, just make sure all lined up properly. And let's apply a bit of glue. And any glue going to come out? Come on, come on. There we go, as small a bead as we can. Okay, there's a little bit too much glue on there, but nothing that a good sanding can't sort out once it's dry. We need to fill that gap, so I'm going to do a little bit of experimentation. I'm going to mix up a bit of tissue with some wood glue to make a kind of paper mache type affair. And how do we open the clappers once it's glued? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay, that's lovely and tacky and horrible. I hate having tacky, sticky hands, but that just tells me it'll do the job perfectly. So let's just shove all that in there. And using a trusty toothpick, poke it and shove it into every possible gap there is. Try and make this as solid as possible. All glued, we'll let that dry. Not sure how long this takes to glue, but I left that for several hours and it looks to me like that has glued perfectly well. It's all quite hard, so let's sand off the rough edges. With all the rough edges done, I think we should treat it and give it a bit of a finer grit sandpaper just to make it nice and smooth. This is 240 grit and I'm using it without the sanding block so that I can fold it over and get right into the corners. Now it's time to cut the gap between the two clappers that we glued together. So I found this paint stripping tool from Budget DIY Centre. Holds a razor blade, so it's a nice thin blade. We'll see if that works. Requires a little more elbow grease than I was expecting. Come on, come on. Aha! Right, that felt good. Let's have a quick look. And the moment of truth. Right, let's get it painted. So we're going to paint it black. This is a tub of silk black, which is just a sample pot from a local DIY store, and that'll do the job. Toothpick to the rescue again. That'll fit nicely inside that spring so that we can paint all around it. There we go. We like that. And we'll use this little clip to hold it upright while it dries. With that one left overnight, that's all dry now. So the paint has stuck the clappers together, but no problem. We can get out our trusty little blade and we'll just open that up. What I hadn't taken into consideration was how do we paint the inside? Ta-da! A nice big fat Sharpie to the rescue. And for the deeper in parts where the big Sharpie can't reach, I've got a fine tip Sharpie and we'll just scribble inside there. So far so good, we've got no disasters, so I think we'll now look at painting on the detail. So I've got some white acrylic paint and I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment first to see how to draw some very thin lines, or paint some very thin lines rather. I'm going to start by just folding a standard piece of copy paper, running it through the ink, and then running it along the surface to see if that makes a nice consistent white line. Hey, that's not too bad. Let's try it with some other tools. Well, the screwdriver's a bust. Next we'll try a bit of 350-gram card. Well, that's not really blowing my socks off. It's a bit smudgy, to be honest. Finally, a toothpick, which I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to make this work. Yeah, like that. Well, that's got fail written all over it. Having done all that, I think the safest way is going to be using masking tape, well, as a mask, and we'll trim out a couple of areas where we're going to paint in white. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So let's get on to painting. Now the slightly tricky bit for me is the black and white sections across the top, because this now requires a bit of hand painting and my hands aren't the steadiest in the world. So I have no idea how well this is going to come off, so this is going to look like a slow-mo movie. There we go. And there it is. Our little clapperboard. Come out really well, I think. We got there eventually. I suppose we better see it in action. Camera rolling. Silence on set.
My Miniature Madness, Scene 1, Take 1.
And action.